I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, we're going to review for you the new Yeah Yeah Yeahs album entitled Mosquito. Tom, who are the Yeah Yeah Yeahs? What album in their discography is this? What's this band sound? What's their MO?
Well, they've been around for over a decade in there. Started early 2000s. They were in the New York scene.
Oh yeah.
Really got a lot of attention from their live shows and just some rough recordings that they had put out.
Guitar Hero.
Yeah, Maps.
Maps was on Guitar Hero.
It was kind of like the unlikely underground hit of its time, and but it really is a great song. And Fever to Tell, their first debut LP, it really put them on the map. I didn't even mean to make that pun. Their next album, Show Your Bones, which I actually really like. I know that it's probably, in the general critical consensus, I think probably their least popular. But it just kind of continues their sound, really shapes the songwriting a little bit. And then It's Blitz came out, which we reviewed, and it was a huge change. It was much more electronic, sharper production. The first song on the album was pretty much a dance song.
Right.
And now we're on to Mosquito, their fourth LP, which it really harkens back to a little bit more of the Show Your Bones type production and the songwriting of their first couple of albums. So definitely a change, kind of back to form.
I notice on this one that you see Karen O doing a lot of the same things that she's done on previous albums, where she presents her vocals in kind of a dichotomy of, well, there's really just two main things that she does, right? Mm-hmm. She presents it herself as either just like slowly singing a very soft, kind of almost coy vocal part, which I really like. I really think that kind of shows off her personality. But then the double edge to that is she does this almost kind of shrill yelp into the microphone, and it has sort of like a megaphone EQ on it. Yeah. And it just sounds like it sounds more anthemic, and I think it brings a lot of energy to the sound. But I gotta say, it's something that she's done before, and it's all over this album.
Well, and the thing for me is that I feel like the parts where she's using that, the instrumentals don't quite match like they used to, because those moments of Karen O's is really when she pulls from her like 1970s New York punk roots, vocally. But then the instrumentals, I feel like for example, the title track Mosquito. I know you weren't too keen on that track, and that's one that, and actually Area 52 as well is another one. I think that those are two of the weaker tracks on the album, and I think that they could have been better if there was just more energy in the instrumentals. You listen to both those tracks, the drums are just kind of there. The tempo is actually scaled down a little bit. I feel like if they made that more up-tempo, more classic kind of upbeat punk drumming, it actually would have brought the energy a little more and made the entire song a bit more unified in its presentation and its style.
Because right now in both those tracks, Karen O she doesn't sound natural. She sounds like she's just sticking out like a sore thumb, and her part doesn't really, it's not really inspired lyrics, telling me she's gonna, suck my blood and then saying Mosquito over and over again doesn't really do it for me.
Don't forget the
I forgot the Mosquito sound. Yeah, that was definitely my least favorite track on the album. Area 52 was right down there with it. However, I feel like a lot of these tracks on this album were actually quite good. Specifically, track 6, These Paths. I really enjoyed Buried Alive, as you did as well. And then also the closer, Wedding Song. We get to see, one of my favorite things on It's Blitz was some of the lighter, more melancholic tracks.
Yes.
And especially the closer on that album. I feel like this closer is up there. They know how to write a good closer, and that's something that I definitely appreciate. I felt like this album really suffered from a lack of original, quality songwriting. As you mentioned, the songwriting is quite basic, and then it's all production to make these songs sound bigger than what they actually are. And what I find is the more I listen to this, the less I like it.
I was the same way. I actually really liked it on first listen because I just got an idea of the overall sound, and I thought, wow, this sounds a lot more like early Yeah 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 stuff that I really like. I got to finding that this is actually a perfect foil against It's Blitz. Yeah. Because I felt like It's Blitz had really strong songwriting and kind of sterile production. Here, I feel like the songwriting is a little bit bland, and they try to compensate for it in the edgy production, and it just doesn't really make up for it. Yeah. Particularly, there are some tracks on here that I listen to, and I just think, if these were pared down, they'd be decent songs, but there wouldn't be much going on. I'm pointing specifically at Under the Earth and the second to last track, Despair. They're not terrible songs, But one thing that actually made me realize this is so true on a lot of stuff on this album is on Spotify, which is where I was listening to this, there's an acoustic version of Despair. And I thought, you know what? I want to test this theory out. And I listened to that track. Go do the same if you can, if you're a Spotify fanatic like we are. Because what I found is when you break it down to the actual song, it sounds a lot more natural. And it sounds better, but at the same time, you also realize that there's actually not a whole lot going on.
And then you could say that about a lot of
Exactly. And you go back to the original and you realize that really where all the energy's coming from is just all this stuff that they just slathered in the mix. They threw in some drums that stick out a little too much, in my opinion, some kind of atmospheric stuff that moves around, and it actually distracts from the songwriting itself. But the problem is, then when you actually look at the songwriting itself, it's not always that strong. Now, that sounds like a really strong criticism against this album, and it's what kept it out of a much higher score for me, but still, there were some real gems on this. I think that there were some really good songs, and overall, the entire listening experience, I still found to be enjoyable.
Yeah, I agree, and I just feel like that there was some things that they could have done to structure this more as an album and present it more as an album that would have made it more worthwhile to sit and listen to, because the way it sits now, it doesn't have the best flow, and there's, obviously we already talked about a couple tracks that we might skip. Now, a good example of the flow that I'm talking about, Sacrilege, the first song, it's actually, as Tom was just mentioning about Despair, it's quite simple with a lot of production. And then and something that I mentioned to you, Tom, is the most impacting thing in that song is the vocals, but not Karen O's vocals. The vocals of the soul chorus that they put at the very end. It's very loud, confronting, and almost just gets you pumped up.
Yeah.
But then that moves straight into track 2, Subway, which actually is a nicely written track. However, it's very, very lethargic to start with, and it slowly builds throughout the song. However, it lost all that momentum it just built up with the opening track, and it's like, why did you structure this like that? Why would you put those two songs right next to each other? It just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Not only that, but if you look at the softer tracks on this album, they're all the longer tracks on this album. True. So it makes it feel just a little bit more drawn out than it should be.
Yep, I just feel like this was kind of just punched out. It almost feels like this was just an album punched out in haste and not really well thought out, well planned, well designed. And that's what I'm really looking for in an album. Now, I wouldn't say you guys should stay away from this one, but it definitely could have been something bigger than what it is. Yeah. I'm going 69.
I'm going 69 too.
Where did you guys think? We're all big. I mean, Tom and I both really like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. I know you guys really like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. Where did you end up with Mosquito? And hopefully you're not covered in bug bites. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV Movie Music Critique Forward.
Take your piece.